Edith, you have no idea how late you are. I already have a name.
Tell me about
I
it.
got a name yesterday evening. My name is Chimwemwe.
Oh.
It is no longer just Harriet. I'm no longer just Dr. Harriet Scott. I'm Dr. Harriet Chimwemwe Scott. So thank you so much for our moderator, for the panelists. She's the one who baptized me yesterday, and I'm so happy with that name. I already put it on my social media, and the Kenyans are happy with that name, although they're saying, please come back home. We cannot afford to lose you to the Zambians. But I'm like, well, I'll have a home here and a home in Kenya. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Distinguished guests, honorable leaders and their representatives, partners, innovators, farmers, students that I've interacted with throughout this expo. During the breaks, we have had some very nice networking. Yes, most importantly, the young people here today and the women, the powerful women who are shaping the future of our continent. We are Pan-Africanists. We espouse the ideals of Pan-Africanism, which is one Africa, one people. So good morning. Is it good morning? I am still on my Kenyan time. In Kenya, it's already afternoon. Good morning. It is both a privilege and a responsibility to stand before you today at the Farmers' Choice Awards Expo and Summit 2026. My name is, as I said, Dr. Harriet Scott Chimwemwe. I come to you as the Partnerships Lead for East Africa at FCA. I represent Kenya. I represent East Africa. I represent Zambia. I represent Africa. I also come to you, more importantly, as someone who is deeply rooted in agribusiness. During this expo, as the partnerships lead for East Africa at FCA, we worked very closely with the team here on the ground and the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. I don't know if any of them are in here, or any Kenyan still around. Maybe you could just stand up. Any Kenyans still around? Yes, thank you so much. Representing the National Assembly. We work together to bring the Kenyans on board, and I believe you have been able to engage with them at the pavilion with the products that they have brought and with their desire to collaborate and work together with Zambia and the Southern Africa market, because Zambia is land-linked. It is a very important country for Kenyans, for East Africans. So I believe that you have had interactions with them, and we will continue to interact to build this partnership, because partnerships is what makes the world go round. We cannot move without connecting, without working together. We cannot scale out if we remain isolated. We have to partner together. So other than being the partnerships lead, I am the founder of Zamani Botanicals, which is a premium herbal line. And also through my work at Hasco Consultants, where I'm a consultant in food security and food sovereignty, we engage where partners have a desire to see food sovereignty being realized in our countries and in Africa. I also work in trade and market access. So I stand at the intersection of policy, enterprise, and people. That's my specialty. And yesterday I shared how my love for agriculture and agribusiness was born as a graduate student when I was studying my master's degree in Kenya, in a campus that was very Pan-African. And I began with the little that I had. I did not wait to have 1,000 acres of land. I had a small piece of land where I was cultivating vegetables to feed myself. My desire was for food security for my single self. And in that desire to be food secure, I ended up an agribusiness provider of vegetables to the campus, not just the couples and the families in the campus, but the kiosks that were selling. So I became a supplier. And once you go green, you never go back. I ended up conceptualizing a study to empower women in agriculture, mostly in the marginalized areas of Kenya, to show them that you can use whatever you have to be economically empowered, because no one is coming to save you. You have to learn to save yourself with whatever God has given you in terms of gifts and resources. And that is how it is multiplied. And I moved from there into working with development partners like USAID and institutions from the USA, like Purdue University and Indiana University, and universities in Kenya, as well as the national government and county government in Kenya. And it also moved into working with Pan-African organizations within Africa. So through that, I am also the chairperson of the board of directors for an NGO called Africa Feature Network. Africa Feature Network is an organization that is focused on giving solution-based journalism in a Pan-African way, where Africans share their stories and where Africans empower themselves with their stories. There is a famous saying that says, unless the lion shares their story, history will rewrite it. I think I've rephrased it. So we have to share our own stories as African people, otherwise people will write stories for us. So Africa Feature Network is a solution-based journalism organization. And I chair the board, giving oversight. And we are working not only in Kenya, but in West Africa, South Africa, and North Africa, as well as in the United States with development partners. So it is really a pleasure to be here. I saw the powerful women here, and they really inspired me. I am also a mother. In Kenya, we have a soft spot for the young people. We call them Gen Zs. I don't know if you have Gen Z. Do you have any Gen Zs wanting to have a revolution in Zambia? Are the Gen Zs here dissatisfied with governance and with social life? Because in Kenya, we have the Gen Zs, and we had a Gen Z revolution. So we have a soft spot for the Gen Zs, because we know they want change, they want to have a seat at the table, and they want to be movers of society. So I have two Gen Zs, two children who are Gen Zs. My firstborn is 18 years old, and then I have a boy who's 16 years old, and my lastborn is a girl who is 12 years old. So whatever I do it also as mentorship to them, so that when they come into their own, they know that they have a space to be able to speak, to be able to give solutions, to empower themselves and also the society at large. So today we gather around a powerful theme, and the theme is youth and women in agribusiness. And the panelists have already laid the foundation. Youth and women are not just beneficiaries. They are not just participants. Youth and women are drivers of transformation. And when I discovered myself, and in life you will realize you have to go through a journey of self-discovery, a journey to learn to love yourself as an African woman or an African man, a journey to be self-determined as an African man and an African woman. And the journey is never by coincidence. The journey is always on purpose. Everywhere you go has a purpose to it. So after my master's studies, I began working in the farms and the fields of Western Kenya. And in Western Kenya, I saw how the drivers of food were mainly women and the young people. When we were in the fields planting and working with organizations to introduce different strains of crops that can ensure that we are food secure, I realized that food security is about availability, but food sovereignty. Say food sovereignty. Are you familiar with the term food sovereignty? Yes. I realized food security is about availability. Do we have enough food to feed ourselves in Zambia? Do we have enough food to feed ourselves in Kenya? And as I have heard from different speakers, no, we do not have enough food because they are not able to supply the market. There's too much that is still required to be food secure. But you cannot be food secure without having food sovereignty. As our fruit lady here said, you have to own land. As a young person, as a woman, you have to have some land that you call your own. And that is what is food sovereignty. When I was working in the fields, I realized women were disempowered because they did not have ownership. Ownership is very cultural and gendered. But the women are the ones who give most of the labor through the food value chain. They are there when you plant, they are there when you harvest, and it is important to know that at the end of the value chain, who pockets the money? And is it empowering or disempowering to both the youth and the women? As I worked in the fields, I realized that the crops that we used to plant, the indigenous crops, were being replaced. I also noticed that knowledge was not being passed down from one generation to another. There is a gap where the older generation are passing away with very important indigenous knowledge when it comes to farming and farming systems. And it is important that young people are able to tap into this knowledge. Some of it is transferred through oral tradition. I'm not only a food sovereignty specialist and food security specialist, I'm also a gender specialist and a culture specialist. I believe for us to achieve both food security and sovereignty, we have to look at culture, how culture peeps into the farming systems and informs the farming systems, and how it is also gendered, how society believes this is what women are supposed to do and this is what men are supposed to do, and how we can transform that and break any barriers that are preventing us to achieve food sovereignty. So knowledge is not being passed down. Traditional crops are being replaced. There's a place in Western Kenya where they plant maize, and maize is a staple food crop for many African countries, especially in the sub-Saharan area. And yet, the maize that was introduced, it is not drought resistant for some areas and regions. And before maize was introduced, they used to plant sorghum. And sorghum is very drought resistant. So part of my work was to go into these areas and reintroduce sorghum. And when you reintroduce sorghum, you have to teach. I saw some of my ladies here are teaching in the fields and in the villages. You have to go back and teach the community about the benefits of a grain like sorghum compared to a grain like maize. And not only that, you have to teach how you can work with sorghum from the beginning of the value chain to the very end of the value chain. And not just that, even introduce recipes. It becomes fun. It is not just a matter of thinking and talking in abstract forms. You have to teach new recipes on how you can use sorghum to make cake, how you can use sorghum to make cookies, how you can make sorghum to improve the nutrient value of a soup. So the whole value chain has to be looked into, even as you are looking at the problem of how to empower youth and women through the food value chain. So as we have this discussion, let us remember that food sovereignty is about power, and as youth and women, we have to be empowered. So there's a reality we must confront as African people, and that is Africa has the youngest population in the world. As you can see here, it is mostly millennials. Millennials are the younger millennials and the Gen Zs, I believe. Let me just see by a show of hand. How many Gen Zs do we have here? Do you know if you're a Gen Z? You want me to define the Gen Z? Can somebody quickly go on Google and tell us which years are the Gen Zs? Between which and which? 2000 and? From 2006 maybe? 2008? going to around 2013 or 2012 are the Gen Zs, because I know, I'm guessing using my children's age, because I know where my Gen Alpha begins. And then you have the Millennials, that is 1990, millennials begin around 1982 to 1993. So if you've gotten those timelines, how many Gen Zs do we have here? 2006 born to around 2013. These are millennials. You are millennials. Millennials, 93 to 2005. Oh, these are all people I'm dealing with. Are you Gen Xers? Why are people? I'm so sure you are Gen Zs, but it's okay. Still, 35 years and below. Those are the young people, they say. In fact, right now, if you apply for any funding and you are above 35, you realize you are already out of the demographic for funding. Young people are 35 years and below. So Africa has the youngest population in the world. And then women make up nearly half of the agricultural workforce. And in many regions, even more. You can go even to 3/4 of the workforce is women. And they say behind every powerful man is a woman, or 2, or 3, or 4, or even 5 nowadays. Even it can reach 10. Somebody can have a whole company backed by women. So that makes up for that 3/4 in some regions. Yet the reality is uncomfortable. This is the uncomfortable reality. The youth face barriers to land, capital, and markets. As they're asking, you are telling us to go into agribusiness, but we don't have land. You are telling us to go into agribusiness, but we don't have capital. How are you supposed to do this? Women also face systemic exclusion from ownership, financing, decision-making, and more whenever it comes to the food value chain or the farming system. Also, agribusiness is still perceived as survival, not opportunity. Some of the things that prevent us from moving into agribusiness, for example, into food farming, is that perception of this one is just planting because she wants to survive. It is not a matter of, this is an opportunity where I can really make profit, not just try to survive. So the problem in Africa is not a capacity problem based on that. It is a systems problem. Even as we have grappled and discussed through this expo, the conclusion I have made, it is not about capacity, because we have the capacity, we have the women, we have the youth. But what is not happening? It is systems that are failing us. When young people innovate, they struggle to scale. Because to scale, you need funding. To scale, you need capital. To scale, you need technical expertise that has to be backed with some money. That is a systems problem. When women produce, they struggle to profit. Because sometimes when you try to farm, you realize what you put is not what you get in terms of profits. I'm a small-scale farmer in Western Kenya. I began farming on a bigger scale than my small plot of land at grad school about 3 years ago. And I began with very little knowledge about indigenous farming on that particular area of Kenya. I began farming maize, beans. I do a little bit of vegetables and sweet potatoes. I'm actually thinking maybe I need to convert and move from doing cereals to doing fruits, avocado. Because now I'm thinking 15 years to come, my eldest will be around 30-something. I need to be able to leave something from my progeny to continue with. And in 15 years' time, that can be something that they can inherit. So I'm beginning to see that maybe what I'm doing right now is not bringing any profit, although it is helpful for subsistence. And yet I'm wondering at the same time, these children are about to leave home. One of them has already left, the eldest. The second one is about to leave. I'm having these sacks of maize in the house that I have harvested to feed them, and they are no longer at home. So it should not be just about subsistence now. It should be about profit and how I can help them to be secure financially in the future. So the problem there is struggling to profit when you're farming. Another systems problem is when enterprises grow, they struggle to trade across borders. Like I mentioned, I own a botanical line called Zamani Botanicals, and I deal with herbs, high-end herbs. And one of the herbs is baobab powder. I also do hibiscus petals, dried, and I also do ashwagandha powder. I also do moringa powder, and then we have a mondia white tea powder. These are specialist powders for wellness. So if I want to trade across to Zambia, there are different challenges that I will encounter. And one of the challenges I wanted to overcome was to be able to find a partner in Zambia so that we can see how I can have my products here, even as I work on getting all the certification for export in Kenya. So you want to grow, but you struggle to trade across borders. And yet, with all these problems in the systems, Africa feeds the world's potential. So the question is not, can youth and women lead agribusiness? The real question is, why haven't we built systems that allow them to lead fully? So when I was conceptualizing Zamani Botanicals, which was born from the realization that you not only need to be theoretical, you also have to have a product that you are packaging and adding value and selling, I realized that our heritage has value. Our herbs have value. Our traditional knowledge has value. So how to move from it just being a cultural value to a commercial value? That's how you move to agribusiness. If you have an idea, how do you move it to it having a commercial value? And through Hasco Consultants, I decided this is the way to ensure that the systems we build in trade, in policy, in markets are grounded in data and also in dignity. Because food sovereignty is not just about the right to food or the right to land. It is also about the right to culturally appropriate food for your region, for your land, for your space, for your country. Not just planting something because you want to have a lot of food, but is this the right food? That is what food sovereignty is all about. So dignity is very important. Dignity when you are going into the farming area. Dignity when you're going into agribusiness. So systems, as we are talking about the systems problem, should not ignore culture. Culture is so important. As you look into the farming area and listen to the stories of the young people, listen to the stories of the women, that is how you are able to derive culture and see how they process what they do in the farming area. And to see how you can create systems that are sustainable and are grounded with the culture of that particular area. So when we look at reframing agribusiness, because we must redefine what agribusiness is, I believe when you hear the word agribusiness for youth and women, all you're thinking about is capital. Who will give me a loan so that I can be able to package this peanut butter to sell? But agribusiness is not just about packaging peanut butter. Agribusiness is not just about planting sukuma wiki or spinach or capsicum. Agribusiness is also about data. It is also about logistics. Are you thinking about going into logistics as a young person? Agribusiness is about processing. Are you thinking about working in a processing lab? My product, I had a product called Unga Nutritious. It is a composite flour that makes instant simmer. Have you had that kind of product? I think we had a lady who was selling that product last year from Kenya when we came for a trade mission here. And when we went into the supermarkets, I think I saw some products for instant simmer from South Africa. So this is a simmer that you make without cooking in a fire. You just put in a bowl and put hot water and you already have your simmer or ugali ready in 2-3 minutes. So you save on time and fuel. So one of my products was also that type of flour. And I worked with a processing lab, an incubation lab, together with USAID and a university in Kenya to have this particular product out in the market. And that process of agribusiness was not just about having that product. It was also about going into the market area, both the urban market and the rural market and the ghetto market, to get perceptions from the buyers about what they like. Questions like, would you love to have an instant ugali, instant simmer? Or do you prefer to cook and go through the process of lighting the fire, whether it is using a 3-stone fire or using your gas cooker or using your stove? Which one do you prefer? And there's some who actually prefer to go the long method. So, because it's also cultural, like I said, it has to be, systems have to be grounded in culture. It is cultural because they are able to communicate and talk to their family members as they are making their ugali. But a modern woman would say, actually, I prefer that instant one. Do you have one that is for children? So that if my child is hungry, instead of beginning the process, I just mix it up and give them a cup and they drink. And I was like, actually, I'm going to include a line for children. The instant flour now with a fortification that is suitable for children, because the fortification for children and for adults is different. You cannot put, let's say, a lot of zinc in a child's composite flour compared to the adults. The quantities have to be different. So you have to go back to the lab and formulate a flour that is suitable for the young ones. So it is different when you go to the market and you realize research is also a very important aspect of agribusiness. So when you are thinking about agribusiness, you're also thinking about going into it as a researcher. You are the one who's doing the calculations for us. When I come to the lab, I need somebody in the lab who is a mathematician, a statistician, a chemist, who will do all the formulations, and mine is to work with the farmers to get the raw materials to make this particular flour. So agribusiness is not just farming. It is market access, it is data, it is logistics, it is processing, working with incubation labs, working with processing labs, working with organizations that are dealing with processing, even going and having a processing center that you are establishing for people who want to go into agribusiness. Agribusiness is also branding. Like what we see here, this is part of agribusiness, the branded companies. That is agribusiness. If you are good in branding, if you're good in graphic design, that is an area to consider, a niche to enter. Agribusiness is also technology. Right now, we are talking about the money is going into tech, the money is going to AI. So as you are transitioning from one level to another, for those in the university, consider doing a course in technology or AI so that you can be marketable for the agribusiness world. Agribusiness is also trade. As I slowly realized in my life, I had to move from the farm to the boardroom and into policy and doing trade and market access. And that is why I'm here in Zambia. It is because of trade and helping women who want to export their products to Zambia. So when I built Zamani Botanicals, I wasn't just selling herbal products. I was building a value chain, a brand rooted in African heritage, a product that meets global standards, and this is where youth and women thrive. When given space, youth and women thrive. They thrive by being digital first. I'm very digital. I had to learn And like I said, I have Gen Zs. So I cannot afford to remain being an analog woman. I have to know what is working. I have formed caucuses that deal with tech and AI. I have also formed caucuses that deal with agribusiness and agriculture and horticulture. And I always love having young people on board, because when you have these young people on board, you will never get rusty in your ideas and in how you view the world. So you have to be digital, and then you also have to be innovation driven. Are you innovating something new? Are you creating something new? And more than that, are you aware of your market? Are you aware of the market? The ecosystems need to match your ambition with these three things in place: being digital first, being innovation driven, and being market aware. So why do I like data? Because I am a market access penetration researcher. I like to go to the market and gain data. Data is not just quantitative data. Data is not just numbers. Data is also stories. When I sit with you there and you tell me your story about your products, I am actually collecting data. That's qualitative data. And I'm able to formulate something from that data. So my work at Hasco Consultants is grounded in three principles that are based on data. One, data-driven decisions. We cannot grow what we cannot measure. You have to be able to measure what you can produce. You have to be able to measure how many people that you're able to reach. What type of people prefer your product packaged in brown, and how many people prefer your product packaged in green. You have to be able to simplify it and also have it in a complex manner. We must also invest in real-time agricultural data, market intelligence, and traceability. So that is the first principle that I ground my work in, that is data-driven decisions. Number two, gender-responsive systems. We are not living in a gender-neutral world. We are living in a gender-responsive world. We have a lot about equality, but equality does not mean sameness. We have to know what we as women need and what the young people need. And what women need is access to finance that are designed for their realities. Women also need ownership rights. You have to have a title deed. You have to have a trademark. You have to have a memorandum for your company. Women also need to be included in trade networks. You have to be in the organizations that are going to help you scale out with your products. You have to have the right networks, not just within your country, but also with other countries. The third principle that I ground Hasco Consultants is impact that scales. So we have a lot of pilot projects that we do, and they die at pilot project level. You must be able to have a model that scales across regions, sectors, and borders. Otherwise, you will not be in a space that has other actors that are not just from your country. So it is important that as you look at agribusiness as a woman or as a young person, that you remember to be data-driven, to be gender-responsive, and to have impact that can scale and doesn't remain within that region that you are in. Finally, we are working under a framework. We are not working in isolation. And the framework we are working under is the AFCFTA framework, which is the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is not just a policy, it is a framework that enables us to know how to launch out to other countries. This framework is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and it has a 1.3 billion people single market that even in our time we might not be able to realize. So we have to be able to move from our spaces to think in an African manner, how we can be able to meet the demand not just within our nations but in Africa. If the youth and women are at the center of FCFTA, then we are building a market that excludes If the women and youth are not at the center of FCFTA, then we are building a market that excludes the majority. FCFTA must work for the young agri-tech innovator in Nairobi, the woman-led cooperative in rural Zambia, the herbal entrepreneur exporting from East Africa, the smallholder farmer entering regional value chains. This means we must simplify cross-border trade, we must invest in value addition, we must strengthen regional supply chains, and we must supply finances to SMEs, not just large corporations. Because intra-African trade is not just about movement of goods, it is about movement of opportunity. So this is my call to action. What must change? If we are really serious about youth and women in agribusiness, then we must act decisively. So I have a call to action to different institutions, to the governments, the Pan-African governments, the governments in the African Union. Create enabling environments. Environments that have land access reforms. We must enable the youth and the women to have ownership of land. Create enabling environments in youth-focused financing. Let them be cushioned even as they begin and launch out into agribusiness. Create also trade facilitation. Let there be intra-African trade expos that give technical expertise, trade know-how, and market access to the youth and the women. The second institution is the financial institutions. My call to action. Rethink risk. Please invest in potential, not just collateral. Design products for women and youth so that when a woman comes to a bank or to a cooperative or a SACCO, as we call them in Kenya, they have products tailored for them, products tailored for the youth. Third, support agribusiness as a viable sector. To the private sector, partner with us differently. May the private sectors build inclusive value chains. We want the private sector to invest in local sourcing. And finally, we want the private sector to share knowledge and technology. Share knowledge on how to plant avocado in Zambia. Share knowledge on how to do cold pressing for avocado into oils. Share knowledge on which avocado will meet export standards. To development partners, we would like you to shift from projects to systems. As I said, the issue is not capacity, the issue is systems. We still need funding and lots of funding. So fund scalable solutions. To the development partners, support regional integration. And finally, prioritize sustainability. And my last call to action is to us, the young people and the women. Do not wait for permission. I have never waited for permission in my life. And every time somebody tried to strike me down, I've always taken up space, even a larger space to what they said. You cannot stand here. You cannot be visible. Do not wait for permission. You have to give yourself permission. Do not wait to be validated. Validate yourself daily when you look in the mirror, when you wake up, when you go to bed, speak to yourself. Give yourself the validation that otherwise you might not be given. To the young people and women, own your space fully and then build boldly. If you have an idea, talk about it. I talk about my herbal line like it's the best thing that ever happened on the planet Earth. Build boldly and then collaborate intentionally. Go into spaces knowing I need to come out of here with one premium contact that is going to help me move to the next level. The future of agribusiness is not being decided in boardrooms alone. I have been in boardrooms, and I will tell you that. It is also being built in fields, in markets, and in startups across Africa. So when I think about that place in Western Kenya where I started going into the fields, today I don't think just about challenges. I see possibilities, and those possibilities have brought me to Zambia. I see women who can own value chains. I see youth who can lead agri-tech revolutions. And I see Africa that can feed itself, not just with food, but with pride, identity, and power. As I close, I'm standing here today in Lusaka, and I'm reminded of something powerful. Africa does not lack potential, it only lacks alignment. And we must align between policy and practice, investment and impact, opportunity and access. That alignment is within reach, and it begins with us here today. Let us build an Africa where youth do not leave agriculture, running to the cities thinking that is where they're going to find their solutions. Youth need to lead agriculture. Let us build a future where women do not support agribusiness in the shadows, but they own it. They are visible. Let us build an Africa where trade does not exclude, it connects us as one Africa. Let us build an Africa where innovation does not struggle, it scales. Because when youth and women rise in agribusiness, Africa does not grow food, Africa grows power, and that is food sovereignty. Thank you so much.